The morning sun cast long shadows across the United Earth Defense Command headquarters in Geneva when the first transmission arrived. Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing routine patrol reports when her communications officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez, burst through her office door with a face pale as winter snow. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately," Rodriguez stammered, clutching a datapad like his life depended on it. The holographic display materialized above Chen's desk, revealing a sight that should have struck terror into any civilized species. A massive alien vessel dominated the screen, its hull stretching nearly 10 kilometers from bow to stern. The ship's design spoke of predatory efficiency. Angular surfaces that seemed to cut through space itself, weapon ports that yawned like hungry mouths, and armor plating thick enough to withstand stellar bombardment. But what truly caught Admiral Chen's attention was the being standing before the transmission array. The alien commander stood nearly 3 meters tall, its exoskeleton gleaming like polished obsidian. Multiple arms extended from its torso, each ending in razor-sharp claws that could presumably tear through steel. Its head resembled a nightmarish fusion of insect and reptile, with compound eyes that reflected light like fractured diamonds and mandibles that clicked ominously as it spoke. "Primitive inhabitants of the third planet," the creature's voice resonated through the speakers, each word dripping with contempt that transcended species barriers. "I am War Commander Zekthar of the Hegemony's 4th Conquest Fleet. Your pathetic civilization has been marked for assimilation into the Galactic Empire." The alien gestured with one of its secondary arms, and the display shifted to show a fleet that defied comprehension. Hundreds of warships filled the void, each one larger than Earth's most ambitious space stations. Dreadnoughts bristling with particle cannons floated alongside carrier vessels that disgorged swarms of fighter craft like mechanical locusts. The smallest escort ships dwarfed humanity's largest vessels. "Behold the might of the Empire," Zekthar continued, its mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. "We have conquered 1,000 worlds, enslaved 100 species, and reduced countless civilizations to ash and memory. Your resistance would be entertaining, but ultimately futile." The transmission showed recordings of previous conquests, cities burning under orbital bombardment, alien species fleeing in terror as hegemony ground forces advanced with methodical brutality. Massive structures that once reached toward the stars now lay in ruins, their inhabitants either dead or chained in servitude. "You have 72 of your planetary rotations to surrender unconditionally," Zekthar declared. "Failure to comply will result in the complete sterilization of your world. Your people will be scattered to the solar winds, and your planet will serve as a monument to the consequences of defying the hegemony." Lieutenant Rodriguez expected his admiral to immediately convene an emergency session of the Earth Defense Council. He anticipated desperate calls to activate every defense satellite and mobilize every combat-ready vessel. Instead, Admiral Chen did something that would later be remembered as the moment humanity announced its presence to the galaxy. She laughed. Not a nervous chuckle or a bitter laugh of despair, but a genuine, hearty laugh that echoed through the command center. Other officers stopped their work to stare as their commanding officer doubled over, wiping tears from her eyes. "Admiral?" Rodriguez ventured uncertainly. "Should I alert the Defense Council?" Chen straightened, still grinning. "Oh, Rodriguez, you have to appreciate the irony. They're trying to intimidate us with exactly 72 hours' notice." She gestured at the holographic display where Zekthar's image still loomed menacingly. "These aliens clearly haven't done their homework." The Admiral activated her personal communicator. "This is Admiral Chen to all department heads. Please report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. And Rodriguez?" "Yes, Admiral." "Get me a direct line to Admiral Morrison at the Mars Defense Grid, Admiral Nakamura at the Jupiter Fleet Command, and Admiral Volkov at the Outer Rim Patrol. Tell them we have some visitors who need a proper Earth welcome." As news of the alien ultimatum spread through the command structure, the reaction was remarkably consistent across all levels of Earth's military hierarchy. Senior officers chuckled knowingly, junior officers grinned with anticipation, even the maintenance crews seemed more excited than terrified. Captain Martinez, head of the Strategic Assessment Division, was the first to arrive at the conference room. "I take it you've seen our new friends?" "Seen them? I've been analyzing their transmission for the past hour," Chen replied, pulling up detailed tactical displays. "Their ship design is impressive, I'll give them that, but their intelligence-gathering capabilities leave much to be desired." "How so?" Chen highlighted several sections of the alien fleet formation. "Look at their positioning. They're maintaining a standard intimidation formation about 3 AU out from Earth, perfect for psychological warfare against a planet-bound civilization. Unfortunately for them, we haven't been planet-bound for nearly 2 centuries. More officers filed into the conference room as Chen continued her analysis. "Their ships are clearly designed for bombardment and invasion of pre-spaceflight civilizations. Heavy armor, massive guns, but relatively limited maneuverability. They're built to overwhelm technologically inferior opponents through sheer firepower." Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through the communication array from Mars. "Sarah, please tell me you're not planning what I think you're planning." "That depends," Chen replied, with a grin that her colleagues knew meant trouble for someone. "What do you think I'm planning?" "You're planning to give these aliens the same greeting we gave the Centauri raiders 15 years ago. Now, why would I do something like that? These are clearly civilized beings who've taken the time to send us a formal declaration of conquest. The least we can do is respond with proper etiquette." Admiral Nakamura's laugh echoed from the Jupiter Fleet Command. "Proper etiquette. I like that. How long do you think it will take them to realize their mistake?" Chen studied the alien fleet disposition one more time. "Given their current formation and their apparent confidence in technological superiority, I'd say about 30 seconds after we show them what humanity has been building while they were busy conquering those 1,000 worlds they're so proud of." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's defense networks had been designed by a species that had learned warfare through centuries of conflict against itself. Humans had perfected the art of violence through necessity, innovation, and a peculiar talent for turning everyday objects into instruments of destruction. But more importantly, humanity had never been content to remain on a single world. While the hegemony had been conquering primitive civilizations, humans had been spreading throughout their solar system and beyond. They had built cities in asteroid belts, established military bases in the outer planets, and developed technologies that their new visitors couldn't even imagine. "Rodriguez," Admiral Chen called out. "Send a response to War Commander Zekthar. Standard diplomatic protocol." "What should the message say, Admiral?" Chen's smile widened. "Tell them we appreciate their generous offer, but we must respectfully decline. Also, inform them that they have 72 hours to leave our solar system or face the consequences of trespassing in human space." The communications officer stared at his admiral in disbelief. "You want me to give them an ultimatum back?" "Rodriguez, these aliens have clearly never encountered humans before. It's only polite to give them a chance to leave peacefully before we introduce them to human hospitality." As Lieutenant Rodriguez reluctantly composed humanity's response to the Galactic Empire, Admiral Chen activated the emergency broadcast system that would alert every human military installation from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. The message was simple and direct. "All stations, all fleets, all commands. We have visitors who think they can intimidate humanity. Please prepare to demonstrate why that was a poor decision. Operation Homecoming is now active. Repeat, Operation Homecoming is active." Throughout the solar system, the message was received with the same mixture of amusement and anticipation. On Mars, Admiral Morrison began recalling deep space patrol vessels. At Jupiter, Admiral Nakamura activated construction yards that had been building in secret for decades. In the outer system, Admiral Volkov smiled grimly as he reviewed the positions of ships that officially didn't exist. War Commander Zekthar would have been wise to spend more time studying humanity's history before issuing his ultimatum. He might have learned that humans had a peculiar habit of responding to threats with overwhelming violence. He might have discovered that the species that had once fought world wars with primitive chemical weapons had developed a somewhat darker sense of humor about existential threats. Most importantly, he might have realized that any species capable of turning their entire solar system into a fortress was probably not the ideal target for standard intimidation tactics. But Zekthar was confident in the superiority of hegemony technology and the proven effectiveness of their conquest doctrine. After all, the strategy had worked perfectly on 1,000 previous worlds. He was about to discover why the 1,001st time would be different. War Commander Zekthar received humanity's counter-ultimatum with the same mixture of amusement and disdain he had shown to countless other species. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable conquest, he displayed the human message to his senior staff. "They demand that we leave their system," he announced, his mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among his species. "These primitives actually believe they can threaten the Fourth Conquest Fleet." Sub-Commander Vexatai, his chief tactical officer, gestured dismissively with her secondary arms. "Shall we begin the orbital bombardment immediately, War Commander? Their defiance has already provided sufficient entertainment." Zekthar considered the suggestion. Standard protocol dictated an immediate punitive strike to demonstrate hegemony superiority. However, something about the human response intrigued him. Most species responded to initial contact with either abject terror or desperate pleas for mercy. The humans had done neither. "Maintain current position," he ordered. "Deploy reconnaissance drones for a detailed survey of their planetary defenses. I want to understand what gives these creatures such unwarranted confidence." The reconnaissance drones launched from the inevitable conquest, their stealth systems activated as they approached the third planet. What they found initially confirmed Zekthar's assessment of human primitiveness. Earth's surface showed the typical signs of a developing civilization: cities connected by transportation networks, industrial facilities, and what appeared to be relatively modest orbital installations. "Their technological development is approximately 700 years behind standard spacefaring species," reported Sub-Commander Vexatai. "Minimal orbital infrastructure, no evidence of energy shields, and their largest vessels appear to be simple cargo transports." Zekthar nodded approvingly. "As expected, begin recording the bombardment sequence. High Command appreciates documentation of successful conquests." But as the reconnaissance drones expanded their search pattern, something began to trouble the hegemony tactical computers. The human response to their presence was remarkably calm. No panic evacuations, no frantic construction of defensive positions, no desperate attempts to hide their most valuable installations. "War Commander," called out the sensor operator, "I'm detecting unusual activity throughout the system." "Explain." "Multiple objects are moving into position around our fleet. The computer initially classified them as asteroids, but their trajectories suggest artificial propulsion." Zekthar's primary eyes focused on the tactical display as new contacts began appearing on the screen. What had initially appeared to be empty space was suddenly crowded with moving objects. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of contacts were converging on his fleet's position. "Impossible!" Sub-Commander Vextai hissed. "Our sensors would have detected any significant military presence." The answer came in the form of a new transmission from Earth. Admiral Chen appeared on the communication screen, still wearing the same enigmatic smile that had puzzled Lieutenant Rodriguez hours earlier. "War Commander Zekthar," she began politely, "I hope you've had time to consider our previous message. Since you seem disinclined to accept our generous offer to leave peacefully, we thought you might appreciate a demonstration of human technology." Behind Admiral Chen, a massive holographic display activated, showing a real-time view of the space around Zekthar's fleet. The war commander's mandibles stopped clicking as he realized what he was seeing. The objects surrounding his fleet weren't asteroids. They were ships. Hundreds of human warships had seemingly materialized from empty space, their sleek hulls reflecting starlight as they dropped their stealth systems. But these weren't the primitive vessels the reconnaissance drones had detected near Earth. These ships were larger, more advanced, and bristling with weapon systems that made hegemony technology look quaint by comparison. "Allow me to introduce you to the home fleet," Admiral Chen continued conversationally. "We keep most of our ships out here in the asteroid belt. Better to maintain the element of surprise, don't you think?" Sub-Commander Vextai's voice cracked as she read the tactical display. "War Commander, I count over 800 vessels, with more appearing every minute. Their largest ships they're larger than our dreadnoughts." Zekthar struggled to process what he was seeing. Each human vessel displayed technology that shouldn't have existed on a supposedly primitive world. Adaptive armor that shifted and flowed like living metal. Energy weapons that pulsed with barely contained stellar fire. Shield systems that bent space itself around their hulls. "Impossible," he repeated, but his confidence was beginning to waver. "Our intelligence confirmed they were a pre-spaceflight civilization." Admiral Chen's smile widened. "Oh, that. We appreciate your scout's thorough survey of Earth's defenses. Very professional work, by the way, but you might have noticed we humans have a tendency to spread out a bit." The holographic display shifted to show the entire solar system. Red dots began appearing throughout the system, each one representing a human military installation. Mars bristled with defense platforms and shipyards. The asteroid belt revealed itself to be honeycombed with hidden bases and manufacturing facilities. The outer planets supported massive fleet concentrations that had somehow remained completely invisible to hegemony sensors. "You see," Admiral Chen explained, "we learned early in our development that putting all our eggs in one basket was generally a poor survival strategy. So we built quite a few baskets, and filled them with some rather impressive eggs. War Commander Zekthar's tactical computer finally finished analyzing the human fleet composition and delivered a report that sent chills through his exoskeleton. The humans didn't just outnumber his conquest fleet. They outmassed it by a factor of nearly 10 to 1. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence networks monitor all developing civilizations. There was no indication of such massive military construction." "That's because you were looking for the wrong things," a new voice interrupted. Admiral Morrison's image appeared alongside Chen's, speaking from his command post on Mars. "Your species conquers primitive worlds, so your intelligence apparatus is designed to detect primitive threats. You look for nuclear weapons, basic spacecraft, and planetary defense networks." Admiral Nakamura joined the conversation from Jupiter, her expression as calm as her colleagues. "What you don't look for are species that have spent the last 2 centuries militarizing their entire solar system while pretending to be harmless primitives." The implications hit Zekthar like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't been surprised by first contact. They had been waiting for it. Every human response since his initial transmission suggested they had been preparing for this exact scenario. "Your reconnaissance focused on Earth because that's where primitives keep their civilization," Admiral Chen observed. "But we haven't been truly Earthbound for over 100 years. We just let you think we were." The final piece of the puzzle came from Admiral Volkov, whose transmission originated from somewhere beyond Pluto. "While you were cataloging our primitive planetary defenses, we were tracking your fleet from the moment you entered our solar system. Your ships are impressive, War Commander, but they're designed to intimidate species that have never seen real military technology." Zekthar's sensor operator delivered the news he had been dreading. War Commander, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human fleet. Their weapons are charging. All ships, raise shields and prepare for battle, Zekthar ordered, but his voice lacked its previous confidence. Admiral Chen shook her head sympathetically. Now, War Commander, there's no need for unpleasantness. We offered you 72 hours to leave peacefully. You still have, let me check, 71 hours and 37 minutes remaining. You cannot seriously expect the Fourth Conquest Fleet to retreat from a handful of primitive vessels? Zekthar snarled, his pride finally overriding his growing fear. A handful? Admiral Morrison laughed. War Commander, you're currently surrounded by the Home Defense Fleet. That's just our local security force. We haven't even called in the real military yet. The tactical display updated again, showing new fleet movements throughout the solar system. Larger vessels were beginning to move from hidden positions in the outer system. Ships that dwarfed even the largest hegemony dreadnoughts were slowly accelerating toward Zekthar's position. The Deep Space Fleet is currently en route from the Kuiper Belt, Admiral Volkov reported. Estimated arrival time, 43 hours. I should mention that those ships have never been used in actual combat. We're all quite curious to see how they perform. Sub-Commander Vextai's voice was barely a whisper. War Commander, we need to leave, now. This isn't a primitive civilization. This is a trap. Zekthar stared at the tactical display, watching as more and more human ships revealed themselves. Each vessel represented technology that matched or exceeded hegemony standards. The humans had built a military force capable of challenging the Empire itself, and they had done it while maintaining the perfect disguise of primitive innocence. Who are you? He demanded. Admiral Chen's expression grew serious for the first time. We're the species that turned ourselves into weapons because we had no choice. We're the civilization that learned to fight by fighting ourselves for thousands of years. We're the people who looked at the infinite darkness between the stars and decided to fill it with ships and guns and the absolute certainty that no one would ever again threaten our survival. Her smile returned, but now it carried an edge that cut through the communication channel like a blade. We're humans, War Commander, and you just made the mistake of assuming we were harmless. The bridge of the inevitable conquest fell silent as the full scope of their situation became clear. The Fourth Conquest Fleet, terror of 1,000 worlds, had walked directly into the jaws of a military machine that had been waiting decades for exactly this moment. Zekthar had one chance to salvage the situation before it escalated beyond all control. But his pride and the weight of hegemony doctrine made retreat seem impossible. He was about to learn why sometimes the impossible choice is the only intelligent one. War Commander Zekthar's pride had doomed civilizations before, but never his own forces. Standing on the bridge of the inevitable conquest, surrounded by tactical displays showing thousands of human warships, he made the decision that would reshape galactic politics for centuries to come. All ships, attack formation, he commanded. We are the Fourth Conquest Fleet of the hegemony. We do not retreat from primitives. Sub-Commander Vextai's protests died in her throat as duty overrode survival instinct. Throughout the hegemony fleet, weapon systems charged and shields reached maximum strength. The aliens had conquered 1,000 worlds using these same tactics. Overwhelming firepower had never failed them. Admiral Chen watched the alien fleet's preparations with the detached interest of a professional studying an inferior opponent. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. War Commander Zekthar has declined our generous offer. Please demonstrate why that was an unfortunate decision. Rules of engagement are free fire. Repeat, weapons are free. What happened next would be studied in military academies throughout the galaxy for generations. The human response wasn't the desperate barrage of an outmatched defender. It was the precise, calculated destruction of a target that had walked willingly into a carefully prepared killing field. The first wave of human attacks came from weapons the hegemony had never encountered. Gravity manipulation devices that crushed alien ships like empty cans. Quantum disruption cannons that simply erased matter at the subatomic level. Temporal displacement weapons that aged target vessels centuries in seconds. The inevitable conquest shuddered under impacts that bypassed its shields entirely. Zekthar watched in horror as entire sections of his flagship simply ceased to exist, consumed by weapons that attacked the fundamental forces holding matter together. "Impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. His proud conquest fleet was being systematically dismantled by technology that shouldn't have existed. Admiral Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. "War Commander, you're experiencing what we call technological superiority. Your species has been conquering primitives for so long, you forgot what happens when you encounter an actually advanced civilization." The hegemony fleet tried to respond, but their weapons proved laughably inadequate. Energy beams that could level cities dissipated harmlessly against human shielding. Kinetic projectiles that could shatter moons were caught and redirected by gravity fields. Even their most powerful fusion warheads detonated uselessly against barriers that bent space itself. "Your weapons are designed to destroy planets and terrorize populations," Admiral Nakamura observed, as human ships danced between alien attacks with impossible grace. "Ours are designed to kill other warships operated by people who understand warfare." Sub-Commander Vextai's tactical display told the story in brutal clarity. The hegemony fleet was being destroyed without inflicting a single casualty on the human forces. Ships that had conquered solar systems were being picked apart by enemies who moved like ghosts and struck like gods. "War Commander," she gasped, "we must surrender. Our weapons cannot even penetrate their defenses." Zekthar's world crumbled around him as he watched his invincible fleet die. The inevitable conquest, listed heavily to starboard as another impossible weapon, tore through its engineering section. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red as his crew struggled to maintain basic life support. "This cannot be happening," he repeated, clinging to doctrines that had never failed before. "We are the hegemony. We are inevitable." Admiral Chen's voice echoed through the dying ship's communication system. "War Commander, you have 30 seconds to order your surviving ships to stand down, or we'll finish what you started." The tactical display showed the scope of the disaster. Of his original 400 ships, fewer than 50 remained combat effective. Those survivors hung dead in space, their crews probably as shocked as their commander. The humans had demonstrated their technological superiority with surgical precision, crippling rather than destroying most vessels. "They're giving us a chance to surrender," Sub-Commander Vextai urged. "War Commander, please, our crews don't deserve to die for the Empire's arrogance." Zekthar looked around his ruined bridge. Officers who had served him through dozens of conquests now stared at him with eyes that had seen the impossible. His proud fleet, terror of the galaxy, had been reduced to wreckage in less than an hour. "All ships," he transmitted, his voice heavy with defeat. "Stand down! Repeat, all ships stand down!" The firing stopped immediately. Human warships that had been delivering systematic destruction suddenly held their fire, maintaining perfect firing solutions while offering the survivors a chance to comprehend their situation. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main screen, her expression showing neither triumph nor mockery. "War Commander Zekthar, you are now prisoners of the United Earth Defense Forces. Your surviving crews will be treated according to the laws of war, and your wounded will receive medical attention." "Why?" Zekthar asked, genuinely confused. "Why spare us? We came to destroy your world." "Because that's what civilized people do," Admiral Chen replied simply. "We defend ourselves when attacked, but we don't massacre helpless enemies. Your crews were following orders. They don't deserve to die for their leader's mistakes. The aftermath of the battle revealed the true scope of human preparation. Medical ships that had been concealed throughout the asteroid belt moved in to treat wounded aliens. Recovery vessels began collecting hegemony survivors and disabled ships. Engineering teams started analyzing alien technology with the efficiency of people who had been planning for this moment for decades. But the most shocking revelation came when Admiral Volkov arrived with the Deep Space Fleet. The ships that emerged from the outer system dwarfed everything that had participated in the battle. Vessels kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack planets and shielded by technology that made reality itself negotiable. War Commander, Admiral Chen explained as medical teams transferred him to a human facility, what you encountered today was our home defense fleet, essentially our local police force. The ships you're seeing now represent our actual military. Zekthar stared through the medical bay's transparent aluminum windows at ships that redefined his understanding of power. How long have you been building these fleets? Ever since we realized we weren't alone in the universe, she answered. We detected hegemony expansion about a century ago. We've been preparing for this first contact ever since. The implications staggered him. Humanity hadn't been caught off guard by galactic civilization. They had been studying it, analyzing it, and preparing to defend against it for generations. While the hegemony had been conquering primitives, humans had been building the tools to destroy the hegemony itself. What happens now? He asked. Admiral Chen smiled that enigmatic smile that had started this entire disaster. Now we have a conversation with your government about the future of galactic politics. Your empire has been operating under certain assumptions about the balance of power. Those assumptions have just changed. Throughout the galaxy, news of the Fourth Conquest Fleet's destruction spread like wildfire. The hegemony, which had seemed unstoppable for millennia, had encountered a species that could not only match their technology, but surpass it completely. Worlds that had accepted conquest as inevitable began to whisper about resistance. In the highest councils of the Empire, emergency sessions debated responses to the impossible. Their most powerful fleet had been crushed by what intelligence services had classified as a primitive civilization. If humans could build such devastating military forces in secret, what other species might be hiding similar capabilities? The answer came 3 days later when human ambassadors arrived at the hegemony capital. They came in ships that made the Deep Space Fleet look modest, escorted by vessels that treated physics as a polite suggestion rather than an absolute law. Ambassador Sarah Okafor stood before the Hegemony High Council and delivered a message that would transform galactic civilization. The age of conquest is over. Humanity proposes a new paradigm for galactic relations, based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. The High Counselors, beings who had never known defeat, listened in stunned silence as she outlined humanity's vision for the future. Species would be free to choose their own governments. Trade would replace tribute. Military force would be reserved for defense rather than expansion. And if we refuse? Asked High Counselor Mordak, his pride still struggling against reality. Ambassador Okafor's smile carried the same edge that Admiral Chen had displayed days earlier. Then you'll discover what happens when humans stop being polite and start being serious about warfare. The demonstrations that followed made the Fourth Conquest Fleet's destruction look like a minor skirmish. Human ships appeared throughout hegemony space, not to conquer, but to liberate. Worlds that had suffered under alien rule for centuries suddenly found themselves protected by beings who understood that true strength came from defending the weak rather than crushing them. The galactic empire that had once seemed eternal crumbled in a matter of months. Some species chose to join humanity's new coalition willingly. Others required more persuasive demonstrations of the changed galactic order. A few tried to resist and learned why humans had spent so long perfecting the art of war. War Commander Zekthar, recovering in a human medical facility, watched the transformation of galactic civilization with a mixture of awe and terror. His species had tried to intimidate humanity and had awakened something that made the nightmares of 1,000 conquered worlds pale in comparison. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the realization that humans seemed genuinely committed to their stated principles. They conquered by liberation, ruled through cooperation, and demonstrated their superiority by raising others to their level rather than grinding them into submission. It was, Zekthar reflected, a far more terrifying prospect than simple destruction. The hegemony had created enemies through cruelty. Humanity was creating allies through kindness. And allies, he was beginning to understand, were infinitely more dangerous than enemies. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps, he thought as he watched human engineers helping to rebuild damaged hegemony vessels, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. The age of conquest was over. The age of humanity had begun. And somewhere in the asteroid belt around an unremarkable yellow star, Admiral Sarah Chen was already planning for the next challenge that would inevitably arise. After all, the galaxy was a very large place, and humans had learned that the best defense was often a very good offense.